Health, Wellness, and Lifestyle, an introduction. So, what is health? Well, according to the World Health Organization, and who better to go by, health is a complete state of physical, mental, and social well being. It's a sort of balance of things. It's not just the absence of disease or infirmity. So, if you're not sick, that doesn't automatically make you healthy. It's more of a balance of multiple dimensions of wellness. So let's take a look at some of those dimensions now. We've got social wellness. This is your ability to maintain fulfilling and meaningful relationships throughout your life with family members, friends, romantic partners, and community members at large. These are people who can support you and you can be supported by during the good times and the bad. Next is environmental wellness. And we can think about this in sort of two different ways. There's the larger idea of your relationship to the natural world. Is it a positive one or a negative one? And I mean, that comes back to affect you in terms of the toxins that you're exposed to. There's also a different way to think about this, which is paradoxically bigger and smaller at the same time. Bigger in that it has more of an impact on your day-to-day living, and smaller in the fact that it just has less of an impact on the world at large, and that's your immediate living environment, right? Do you live in a place that's dirty or messy or not? And I mean, that can extend also to whether or not you live in an environment where people are yelling all the time or not. Let's take a look at financial wellness now, and that's not necessarily how much money you have, but more a matter of your ability to manage it so that it doesn't become a stressor in your life. Spiritual wellness can be thought of as your understanding of your place in the universe, or the fact that you have or don't have a sense of purpose. And for many people, this comes from a religious point of view, but it need not. It's more a question of getting your head out of your own butt long enough to take different perspectives and different points of view and understand the world in a different light. And that's how we gain wisdom as time goes by. Next is emotional wellness, which can also be called mental health. And we all have a sort of a good sense of what mental health is. And emotional wellness can comprise different things like time management and stress management and even just sort of mental management, your management of your own mind and thoughts, such that you can express your emotions in healthy and constructive ways. Intellectual wellness might also be called sort of your potential for intellectual growth, and that is your ability to think clearly, critical thinking, reevaluate your ideas and opinions when presented with new evidence or rational arguments. There's also an element of self-awareness that fits into this, and it's something to think about. Here's a nice quote I like. "You must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool." Richard Feynman. All right, now you don't believe everything you think. Most people are wrong about most things most of the time, and yet we tend to think opposite. And you're no exception to that, but the good news is you don't have to stay wrong any longer than you need to. So I invite you to sort of reevaluate your ideas as you get presented with new ones, and that's how you ensure your growth. And our last category is physical wellness, and that's sort of the stereotypical idea of health. That's not having any diseases, not being sick. Your physical health, physical wellness, and things that go into that are in your control are things like exercise and your nutrition habits, as well as getting enough sleep and things like that. So you may notice that these categories are very interconnected, right? They are, many of them affect others. Your physical health will affect your mental health. Your mental health will affect your ability to interact with others and sort of your social health and so on and so forth. Now, the point isn't to memorize these magical 7 categories. The point is to understand that there's a bit of a balance to be had, right? Because maybe we would present 6 categories, or maybe we'd have 8 categories, and they'd be a little bit different. Here are a couple different presentations of different areas of your life, different things that matter. And there's no magical formula and list to memorize. It's more a question of balancing these things, of finding, that complete state of physical, mental, and social well-being, as described and defined by the World Health Organization. And the issue, if you don't have that kind of balance in life, you'll probably end up sick. Maybe you'll just be grumpy, you'll lose your lust for life, you won't like what you see in the mirror, and eventually you'll end up in the hospital. And that's not a very fun path to be on, but the good news is you don't have to stay on that path. Now, most people know that they need to make changes in their lives, but they don't do anything about it. They know that maybe they should exercise a bit more, eat a bit more healthily, get more sleep, and so on and so forth. But it takes for them a major setback, like a heart attack, before they start considering making lifestyle changes. Now, you don't have to wait for that kind of event, and your actions today can and will affect your future. So let's take a little look at the physical health component a little bit more closely. Here's a research that looks at the determinants of physical health. So health viewed a little bit more narrowly, just the prevention of disease. And it breaks it down into these 4 different categories. And I like it because it lines up in a nice acronym, HELP. And they assign percentages of how much these determinants affect your health outcomes. So we can see, who's in control of this. How much can you actually control? The first H, heredity, and that is, who you were born from, what genes you have, your DNA. Some people are more predisposed to breast cancer, others more predisposed to diabetes, and others more predisposed to having pimples during puberty. Some people are tall, some people are short. These are things you don't really have any control over. And heredity accounts for about 16% of measurable health outcomes. Second is the environment, and this is the environment considering it a little bit more narrowly than we had previously. This is the toxins that you're exposed to. If you're drinking water with traces of lead in it all your life, then that's going to show up in your IQ scores one day. And there are lots of other examples of that. And that accounts for about 21% of measurable health outcomes. Next, we have lifestyle. And you see a sort of a little picture of all these different things that could fit into lifestyle, exercise and nutrition and sleep habits and all kinds of other little elements to this. And that accounts for 53% of measurable health outcomes. And that's what the focus of this course is going to be on, is lifestyle as it affects your health, and what you can do about it. And the last one, P, is for physician care. That's access to medical services, and that's a 10%. We're lucky in Canada to have universal health care here, and even though wait lines might be a little bit longer than you'd like, we still have access to that. So that's pretty good. Now, you might notice that not all those categories were equal. That doesn't mean they're not all important. And I'll give you an example, because even though lifestyle is 53%, there are other things that can have an effect on outcomes. So imagine this case study of Mr. Joe Marathon, pick a face in the crowd. And Joe was not very active in CEGEP. He didn't really take care of his lifestyle that much. But eventually, a couple years down the road, he said, okay, that's it. I'm going to do everything right. And he did. He started taking care of his lifestyle as much as he could. He started exercising more, taking better care of his relationships socially. He started sleeping better. He was eating healthily. He's doing all of the things that he could do. But unfortunately, he neglected the fact that his family has a history of heart disease. He wasn't listening to his physician's advice. And because of that, he ended up at the wrong finish line. Now, my point in giving this little case study, this story, is not to scare you into not trying to run a marathon one day. It's just to be totally transparent about how, even though we can have a great impact on our health by, having a healthier lifestyle, there are some things that are outside of our control. And that's just the way life is. We are quite lucky, though, that the largest determinant of health is under our control. So let's get practical. What can we do about our health? Let's go over some quick tips to healthy living. One is exercise, and I'm going to be hounding on this quite a bit during the course. It's a very important element of a healthy lifestyle. Another is a nutritious diet and nutritious eating habits. I'm going to have a chapter on that too. Smoking, if you can quit smoking and you are a smoker now, that's one of the best things you can do for your health is quit smoking. There are easier and harder ways to do it. So if you are in that position, I encourage you to reach out online, access some resources, learn a little bit about it, and do it the smart and easy way. Alcohol, if you can reduce or maintain a moderate consumption of alcohol, then that'll do a lot for your health in the long run. Getting enough sleep, enough quality sleep, that's pretty important. It's one that we often don't put enough attention on. Here's some quotes about sleep that I find pretty interesting. studies have shown that adequate sleep contributes to healthier blood pressure, cholesterol, and triglyceride levels. On the other hand, people who fall short in sleep hours are more likely to be overweight or obese, or to be diagnosed with hypertension, which is a fancy word for high blood pressure. Here's another one. Most experts have concluded that getting enough high-quality sleep may be as important to health and well-being as nutrition and exercise. So please do focus on your sleep. Stress management is another important one. That's something that you can do to positively impact your health over the long run. Safety habits, like avoiding when you're texting and driving, or always wearing a seatbelt, just avoiding dangerous situations in general. Maybe that includes wearing a helmet when you're biking, or a life jacket if you're engaged in any aquatic activities. And also safe sexual practices. That's another thing that you can do to make sure that you stay healthy. Another one that you can do, and this is a bit less obvious, but just making sure that you live in a health-inducing environment. And that includes sort of, living in a clean area, but also, a social environment, making sure that you stay in touch with friends and get enough of that support when you need it. And lastly, we have visiting your doctor once a year. You might not already be doing this as a St. Shepherd College student, but as time goes on, that's a habit that you want to get into, is having a yearly doctor's visit, just to maintain a baseline of readings on how you're doing, and also be able to access the medical system according to your needs. So here's another little research that answers some interesting questions. This is a meta-analysis of 73 different studies. So that's not just one experiment. They looked at a whole bunch of different experiments and then saw what kind of lessons they could draw from it. And they were asking two questions. One, does being physically active help people live longer? And two, if so, is there a dose response? A dose response means that, more equals more outcome, right? So, if you do, if you're just a little bit active, you might get a little bit of the effect. If you're very active, do you get a larger effect? That's the dose response question. So their findings were that there is an inverse relationship between physical activity and all-cause mortality, which is a fancy way of saying yes, exercise will make you live longer. And there is a dose response between physical activity and all-cause mortality, which is a fancy way of saying yes, more is better. Now, this is not the graph from the study. This is just an oversimplification of how the relationship works. And you'll see that more physical activity equals less death. And the reason I wanted to bring this up is this was looking at studies that consider all-cause mortality, which is a fancy word for saying death from any reason. Now, physical activity obviously doesn't play a role in a lot of kinds of deaths, right? It doesn't matter how active you were. If you got into a car accident, that's not, going to the gym more often. It's not going to help you with that. And there are other things as well that fit into that category. So physical activity has such a strong effect on your health over the long run that it is statistically significant even when we're considering all causes of death, some of which have nothing to do with physical activity. That's pretty impressive. Another thing that the study came up with is that physical activity doesn't just add years to your life, it also adds life to your years, right? No, it's something that you might not be thinking about that much now as a college student, but you don't want to grow up to be 200 years old and not be able to do anything. You want to have a certain quality to your life too, and maintaining an active lifestyle is part of that equation. So physical activity, in summary, will help you look better, sleep better, think better, feel better, heck, maybe even be better. So you might think, all right, that's well and great, Joey, but I don't have time for that. I'm way too stressed. I'm busy. I've got a lot going on. And to that, I would present this little bit of an idea. And that is, if you don't make time for your health, you will have to make time for your illness. And one is way more fun than the other. Another point to consider here is that some of the most effective people in the world make time for activity in their life, for physical activity, because that's part of what helps them be more effective. So it's a bit counterintuitive. You may think I'm too busy in order to do physical activity or exercise. Well, in fact, if you are that busy and aim to be that productive, then maintaining that level of health and high functionality, both in terms of your body and in your mind, should be a priority for you if you really want to be able to handle all those things. So I want you to care about your health. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful time. I'll see you in the next presentation, everybody. Take care.